As a former VC who is now the founder of his own deep tech startup, I can fully appreciate the problem of trying to communicate incredibly complex and abstract ideas from a 360-degree perspective. Many VCs falsely believe they are experts in deep tech, but in reality, they often rely on pattern recognition from other pitches and opinions from their network to appear knowledgeable. Despite this, they still struggle to understand your pitch. I include myself as a VC who thought they were a domain expert in all things deep tech, but I've missed out on several deals that made it big, simply because I just didn't understand the product, the market, or the use case. In retrospect, I cannot even begin to imagine the number of founders who could have made it big, but were instead tossed into the scrap pile of failed startups, simply because they lost the investor. Developing trailblazing technology is really difficult. Applying that tech to tackle incomprehensibly large domain-specific challenges such as climate change or supply chain optimization is even harder. Making money whilst doing it is close to impossible. This is why the market values successful deep tech companies in multiples much higher than traditional VC-backed startups. It should also come as no surprise that deep tech startups who are founded by PhDs tend to raise more cash and have quicker time to unicorn status, and have more favorable terms when raising capital. More than ever, the world's greatest minds are breaking from the norm of academic research to start world-class companies. And not only are they breaking from the norm, they're succeeding. This section is designed to help you, the technical founder of a deep tech startup, help best position your startup to investors and understand what they look for when considering a seed investment. Before we begin, I want to set a foundation for this discussion to ensure that the information outlined is relevant to you, your company, and your technology. First, the stage of your company is one at which the founders want to commercialize a piece of technology that is at or right before the proof of concept stage. The proof of concept stage is defined as a small project to test whether the prototype or some selected feature or functionality has some commercial opportunity or feasibility. Most founders will already have a prototype at this stage. Second, you may have already received an angel investment, or your team is spinning out of a university. Third, there has to be some level of demonstrated technical execution in that you as a team have established milestones and met these milestones within a predictable manner. And finally, a clear plan and path to commercialization within a reasonable time frame. Realistically, you should begin to see some commercial traction in the third year post-institutional financing. The first step is to make sure that your company is actually deep tech. What is deep tech? Deep tech is a term coined by Swati Shettervedi, CEO of PropelX in 2015, to differentiate between tech startups built on commonly available technologies and those engaged in long-term scientific and technological R&D. To better understand if your company is truly deep tech, I find it helpful to consider the following two categories. The first is defensible technology. Defensible in the sense that it's tangible intellectual property that can be protected, but also incredibly difficult to reverse engineer. This is why most deep tech originates from the university, because it combines the bleeding edge of research, science, and engineering. As an example, if you've written a proprietary algorithm for natural language processing that outperforms industry benchmarks and the current state of the art, that's deep tech. Inversely, if you're using an API such as Google's speech to text, this would not be considered deep tech. The second category is the data moat. If your company that has developed a means of acquiring data which provides a considerable advantage over the competition, you've built yourself a data moat. In some cases, the two categories will overlap in that you need one in order to satisfy the other. I have, however, come across companies where the technology itself may not be considered that impressive, but they've developed unique ways of acquiring high-quality data that is at least one order of magnitude better than the competition's. What problem does your technology solve, and who is the team behind it? As I mentioned before, a lot of VCs like to pretend they know deep tech. Sure, some may be PhDs with strong technical backgrounds and experiences. I'm not disparaging the gifted ones. You, as the domain expert, in many cases will need to dumb it down to utilize lowest common denominator explanations to ensure that your pitch is fully comprehended. Remember that you've been completely immersed in your research, and what you think may be a simplistic version may be way too complex for your audience. Come up with one sentence that drives home what your technology does, what the vision is, and what real-world problem it solves. There's no need to dive into the specifics of the algorithm, the mathematical models, or scientific elements of your technology. You'll have time for that during the due diligence. Just keep it simple so you can gauge investor interest and field the first set of questions, be it technical, business, data acquisition, or anything in between. In addition to the technology, investors want to know the team behind it. How published are they? How many times has their work been cited? Does the team have a track record of working with each other in the lab? Has the team had a successful exit? What about business experience like fundraising and closing revenue? All of the above are important inputs which allow investors to determine if the team is capable of building a real deep tech company and can withstand the highs and lows of the startup journey. A purely technical pitch without a business plan to back it up will only increase your odds of failure. How far along are you? Think of product market fit as a continuum scale. On one end, product development, while on the other, revenue generation. To determine where you are, ask yourself some questions. Are you currently piloting proofs of concepts with customers? Are you still defining market fit? Have you secured a signed purchase order yet? All are important, but what's critical is conveying to investors where you are and how quickly your team can achieve revenue growth. If you're developing quantum computers, you won't likely be at a phase where you've secured customer contracts. However, you can demonstrate technical execution on a bootstrap budget with limited staff. Perhaps you've made breakthroughs in the physics, where the remaining part of development is just pure engineering. Most importantly, you should have a pipeline of customer commitments and have numerous data points on what your future customers will need. How much are you raising and what is it for? Setting your deep tech company's seed valuation is more of an art than it is a science. You obviously want to keep as much equity as humanly possible, but you also want to make sure that your Series A or subsequent funding rounds are reasonably priced. For example, you can raise $4 million for 10% equity, but that would value your company at $40 million post-money. The expectation is always to raise the next round at a higher valuation and at a decent return multiple. So based on the industry you're in, is a $120 to $200 million post-money Series A realistic? If not, you may want to reconsider your seed raise so that you don't set yourself up for failure later on. Considering current market dynamics, a typical raise for a seed stage deep tech startup is approximately $4 million for 25% equity. Most of this capital will be invested into R&D, with a small portion going into business development. This should be outlined in your business plan, along with who you intend to hire, with their salary and equity requirements. Another component to fundraising that investors look for is not only the amount you're raising, but how long of a runway will this capital provide the team. Typically, startups will raise enough seed capital to support approximately 2 years worth of development. This timeline provides you with enough time to execute on the most important technical milestones, plus 6 months buffer to your next Series A fundraise. One mistake I often see first-time founders make is not raising enough initial capital to give them the runway they need. They make the rookie assumption of, I'll just go out and raise some more cash when I need to, not realizing that fundraising is incredibly time-consuming. Remember that while you're fundraising, you will not have time to focus on product, technology, or business development. Fundraising is also not something you can outsource, and the leadership team must be the ones driving this. Your seed round may go fast, but subsequent rounds will be held to a higher level of scrutinization. How can you ensure your investors become value-added partners? As much as an investor is choosing you for returns, you should be choosing your investors based upon the value they can bring you. Of course, capital is the most important aspect of all this. But if the team can truly execute on the vision, then you should be able to best select investors that can help bring scale to your vision. Do your homework on the portfolio companies your target VC has invested in and be ready to ask questions on how that investor brought tangible value to the company. Today, I see investors going above and beyond to support their portfolio companies. Especially for deep tech investors, value is being demonstrated in unique ways, such as access to other scientific domain experts, to massive compute environments, and connections to large corporations who are already building platforms and ecosystems to support your work. Practice is perfection. Before you start pitching your ideal VCs, rehearse as much as humanly possible, and rehearse it with people who are further removed from the technology than you are. If public speaking scares you, sign up for an improv acting class to help you learn techniques on how to engage your audience on the fly. Start by pitching either friendly VCs or VCs you don't mind passing on the round. Those VCs at the bottom of your ranking should be used as practice to polish your pitch. Once you hit the top of your list, you can go in with a lot of confidence knowing that your top picks will likely receive the message you intend to convey. So there you have it. Those are all the considerations you should have before fundraising for your deep tech startup. Just to reiterate, first, make sure your technology is in fact deep tech. Second, what real-world problem does your technology solve, and who is the team behind it? Third, how much progress have you made? Fourth, how much are you raising, and what is it for? And finally, how can the investor provide you with value beyond capital? After several pitches, you will start to develop your own machine learning model on what works and what doesn't across different types of investors. You'll end up with different versions of your pitch deck built for various audiences and tailor each one for each new investor meeting. You may want to consider having one deck for the PhD investor that actually knows a thing or two about the topic, and you'll have another deck for an investor that's the traditional former investment banker or MBA. At the end of the day, you are front and center. VCs don't invest in a deck or just a technology, but you as the individual and the team. You need to convince the investor that you are the best person to execute on this vision and can inspire others to join you on your journey. Pitching is entertainment with a purpose. If you have state-of-the-art tech, but subpar presentation skills, you may not make it. The investor should know what you are doing in roughly 20 minutes. The remaining 40 minutes of your pitch should be relaxed and used as an interactive session with the investor to really drive home your pitch. If deep tech founders in Poland and the CEE learn how to effectively communicate their pitch to investors, that will set up the region to become a deep tech powerhouse.